One day, as we were leaving, my son, daughter, and myself, leaving out the apartment to take, I believe, my son to school, he turned around at the door and he said, "When you love someone, you don't put them in a bad environment." And that hit me hard because I, at the time, did not have the money to send them to a private school. And for over 2 years, they had been in online public school Connections Academy. And prior to that, we had moved to Oregon in 2019, and my son was now at that time on his second school. My daughter on her second school as well. She was starting kindergarten. He was starting second grade, and both were experiencing some bullying. Not as diverse. Their schools were not as diverse as the schools they had been to previously in Ohio. And I one day I just looked at their faces and they just looked so like distraught and flat affected. My heart went out to them because I I was with this internal battle. I was trying to use the opportunity to build my career as a writer. I finally thought, okay, I have the time to write. But alongside, I'm seeing children who are not happy in their environments. My daughter started just really fighting with us, wanting to stay in bed, not wanting to go to school. Occasionally, she was experiencing bullying, and my son too, as well, was experiencing bullying. And I really didn't feel like I was part of their education. I didn't know what was going on. Even though I was going to parent teachers conference and felt like I was being informed, my daughter, when I received her report card, there was stuff on there that I had not been told about. And we had just had a parent teachers conference. And at the time, I had found out shortly after that I had pneumonia for the first time. And so I just felt like I was struggling internally. I was just struggling because I was trying to do my work, but yes, so I wasn't feeling like it because I was trying to help them to adapt to their environment. And then 2020, the coronavirus happened, and we had not heard anything back from the school at that time. I think everybody was trying to figure out what to do. And my husband and I just made a decision. We just decided to take them out of public school system and start homeschooling them. And so I made a schedule. I was happy about it, and we did a lot, art, etc. And then, um, come 2021, I'm like, okay, how am I going to educate them? How do I know they're getting the individualized attention and education that they needed? I wanted character and purpose, character and intellect, like Martin Luther King, what education should do, provide, according to him, and I believed it. But I also wanted purpose. I wanted to really start working on a purpose so they can know what they're here for, not struggling to find out in the 40s, trying to build their career. So books, I didn't at the time have the money. We were in, if COVID, you remember how it was, trying to make sure you had enough to even pay your bills. And so I wanted, the right books. I wanted the balance, the flexibility, to see what they were learning because I had, again, previously I felt like I wasn't being included in their education. And even the principal said, we should be happy about you wanting to be a part of your children's education. We don't get that a lot. And I'm thinking, yeah. And I feel so much friction in trying to do that. And so I wanted all of that, right teachers, socialization. And then my husband was like, hey, why don't we look into online education? Narrowed it down to two because one of them was really informative and really nice. And I learned that they were going to have two live lessons a day instead of one. And the process was pretty much seamless. And so we got them into that. And I mean, they were learning stuff. I was learning stuff. I was learning about history, things I didn't know about, slavery, racism, how, a lot of historical facts I didn't know of, right? And I'm learning math and how they're breaking down information, making it fun for them. And my children, we had so much flexibility. We traveled while they were in school. We didn't have to wait to go on summer break, spring break or do anything. We made our own breaks. We made our own vacations. um, And just, when they weren't feeling well, they could lay down and not have their camera on and just, participate and get that credit for the school. And so they, praise and they receive praises, and, they got the honor roll, and continually just praising them, and virtues interwoven in their education. I thought it was really God sent. All of my prayers were answered and then some. And then we moved, and we moved to a state that did not have Connections Academy. That was the online program they were attending. Is actually another state next to us that have it, Missouri. And so I'm looking around, and finally I'm just like, okay, let's just try online public school. It gives me an opportunity. Maybe this is my opportunity to get my career together, focus on writing. So we got them all together. There were some red flags. Communication, didn't know what was going on, didn't know, wasn't told about things in a timely manner. So we missed out on some stuff, and got to meet the staff, some of the staff, and just again dealing with miscommunication. Not a lot about what to do with this night, when we're going to have this. You can come to this, you can't come to that. You need to bring all your school supplies the next day. Just a lot of that. And so my son, they start their first day at school. Kayla's still happy, excited, primarily in the summer that she's going to make new friends. And she started making those. My son, on the other hand, was hearing cursing, foul language, perverseness, and just, having a lot of people that was now in his environment. And he forgot the next day. We picked him up the first day, took him to school, picked him up. He forgot that I wasn't picking him up on the second day. And lo and behold, I go there and I have my phone. I'm waiting for my children, for Cam to come out. Parked my car, walked up to the front of school, waiting for him to come out. Then I hear yelling, and I hear this lady just kind of walking with, just kind of stomping across the area and just walking and just looking like she's really frustrated. And she yells at this kid that was getting ready to cross the street, I guess, standing at the edge, getting ready to cross the street. And she yelled at him. She yelled at him, and she continued to yell at him on the way back to the school, the front of the school, in front of all of the other students. Then she's yelling at the parents. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And so everything what Cam had told me prior, then hearing her and finding out later, we had I had asked her for something. She really got, she was just like, what, and I was like, well, I just wanted to ask you. And, I just was like, hey, no, you can't do that to me. I'm just asking you a question. So she calmed down and she was very polite, but it gave me more information about what Cam was going through. And so he continued to hear things. I started reporting it via email to keep a paper trail. And we just felt like things were not being addressed. And when one thing was addressed, it was because my husband had reached out, and his title was, what he was doing. And so even then after that, still there were some issues about, things that were not responded to, if you will. My husband had even sent an email out, and it never received any response from it, something that Cam had went through in school. And so I think, Cam Daly was telling us what was going on. The foul language, being asked sexual questions, etc. And one day my husband was just like, hey, if you can pay for their school, then you can take them out. You can pay for online program. And so I had remembered that one day my husband gave me that. Again, it was like a challenge, it's like, if you can let's see if you can find this. And I stopped what I was doing. I was working on a project. I remember on a Saturday, and I stopped exactly what I was doing. I searched I think I Google searched, and I found something. I called them to take care of this issue. Lo and behold, they called me back and said, yes, we do that. And I got it taken care of. So I had said, okay, I'm going to use that same mindset, that same energy that I had with that. And I happened to, something came across my mind about a school that I had already researched. They offered a scholarship per month. It was $79 a month per student, and a scholarship if you attend this weekly science live session with Dr. Roger Billings. It's a school over in college over in Missouri. And so I had a folder on them. I looked them up in September, and I pulled that folder out, and I did some research online, and I called someone, And he said, yeah, they could start like the next day, and how flexibility, they have that, the classes. And so I asked Kayla, who was still at home at the time, on a Monday morning. It was a Monday morning when her father said that. Kim had already left for school, and Kayla said, yes, Mom, I'll pay. They had gotten a summer job. This is how God has worked in my life, where I've thought of stuff. And the person that he uses to come to my aid is my mom. And she had mentioned about them having, some work. She had some work that they could do for her and earn some extra money. And I basically told my kid, hey, say, is this something they can do for the summer? Ask grandma, is this something you could do for the summer? Get you a summer job. And she said yes. And had already months prior had prayed that they would have a great summer, because I knew they would want to buy stuff and candy, and how money, I didn't at the time, have the money to do that. Trying to rebuild my career after the coronavirus. And so she gave them a summer job. They bought stuff during the summer, 2023, this past summer, and just buying stuff. And I, had a lot of fun, had money. And then school starts, and Cam goes through that, and Kayla start dwindling. She's like, Mom, I don't like it. It's too long. You got kids that are doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. And then this whole saying about Kayla's hanging out by herself. And she's like, Mom, they're doing stuff and I'm telling them not to do it. And they're laughing at me. And, and then we're having issues with her teacher, you know? And so, oh my gosh, you guys, if it would be a long, 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 long story, but one that is filled with gratitude for sure. So anyway, Tuesday morning, Monday, my husband basically opened the door for an opportunity to get them in. He was on board going back to online school versus public school. And so I called and made arrangements. I paid for their school on Tuesday. I sent the withdrawal. Wednesday, they started the Celis Academy. And I mean, this school, I used to give weekly spelling tests. They have the spelling test incorporated in Kayla's program. And Bubbles, it's like really fun. Spell this word, and she spells it. And they have vector learning, that if they see them struggling in one area, they give them videos to help them. Cam is talking about video recording. He was taking it at the public school, and the campus, actually, when you go to college there, they offer video recording as a degree. And so they get to see the recording. They get to learn about robots, and Cam is into robots and art, and they get to design their own books if they want to do that. And they have to have so many credits, and they get their work done, and they're not just in some classroom all day and having to put up with an environment that is unhealthy and that was appearing unsafe. And so we have that balance, that flexibility. And I had put that on my list, my goals. I was listening to Brian Tracy, and two things. One thing he said is that we tend to think, act, and speak like those in our environment. And you heard of, and I always get it wrong, but it's about association and assimilation. The people that you associate with, you end up being like them. It does matter the environment that we put our children in, because they are truly the future, and they are, whatever they're going through, we feel it. We have it where they're, Cam had told me that one kid, he heard somebody saying that he was listening to a song that had foul music in it, and the parent was next door. I don't know. I'm not trying to bash anybody, but what are our children listening to? We're hearing about suicides. We're hearing about, just homicides, and they're not happy, and bullying, and I kept hearing talk about synchronicities, kept hearing just little things, including Cam saying, when you love someone, you don't put them in a bad environment. And I just kept hearing stuff, and things were just lining up. It's almost as if it's this wall, these bricks that are hitting at whatever is going, your son or your kids are going through, and they're just kind of knocking them down till you can see clearly and say, okay, this is not the right environment. I know how we want our children to socialize, but when they're hearing things over and over again, they can bring that stuff home in our environment. And the more they repeat it, the more they become it. And I think we as parents have an opportunity to really put our kids in that health safe environment, not to shield them from stuff, but really get to decipher and decide and discern what is the best environment for them. And I'm so thankful that when you asked, well, Tamika, you had support, you this Roger Billings, they offer a scholarship, $200 a month applied to tuition, $79 that you have to pay out of pocket. But I put it out there. I put out the prayer that allowed them to get a job. I wrote down my goals and I kept looking at it daily. Multicultural environment, flexible. I could see their grades, that we can work on purpose. They have time to take classes, karate, dance, get involved in a lot of other things, art, that education should not be that hard. It should not. That, yes, it takes up time to go over things with my children. Yes, it takes up time to look at their classes. But yes, to see them thriving and to be excited about learning and still telling me stuff that I didn't learn in school. I thought in Oregon, this is the wave of the future. Online education that gives our children the flexibility, the freedom. I know not everyone, people are going to say, I can't do that. I have a full-time job. I just want to know, if we open the door, if we really put out what we truly want in life, asking you shall receive, seeking you shall find, knock, and the door will be open. If we really put out what we truly want in life, and our heart is in sync with God's heart and family, and how to put our children in a healthy, safe environment, if we are really in alignment, will we open the door for things that we never thought could have happened, to give us that which we desire and our children desire. Today is Valentine's Day. When you love someone, and this is not just school, but we're talking about girlfriend, boyfriend, spouses, marriages. We're talking about coworkers and employers. When you truly love something, you will you will try your best to put them in an environment that allows them to thrive, to put yourself in an environment that allows you to thrive. We no longer have to stay put in something that is not helping us to grow and be the people that we need to be. Sure, things can help you. When you go through adversity, they can. But the more I kept thinking, but when you have your son around 900 people a day that are constantly hearing profanity, seeing fighting, and my son said, Mom, I think it's going to get worse. And I don't know if it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, but he started seeing more fights in the school. What do? You open yourself to possibilities. You open yourself to, what am I missing here? I need your help, universe. I need some support here. And yeah, people could say, you could get a job, you could do this, but to work with what you have. Many of us are sacrificing. I get it. Because when I first said, when my children started school, I said, my children should not have to suffer for me to live my career, to do the work that I'm here to do. Because in actuality, my purpose is part of their purpose. Their purpose is part of my purpose. We're intertwined together in living this life and being here and being the light in the world. And so I don't know how this is all going to work out. I just know one thing. I was given an opportunity. My children were given an opportunity to change the environment of where they were and to really thrive in an environment that is praising them, that is honoring them, that is paying attention to them. They get praises when they do great. Emails, great job, great work, good job, and I get to see what they're doing. I get to hear them talk about, Mom, I learned this in school. Did you know this? And it's such a blessing, even though there are times where I get frustrated because I'm, of course, I have to balance my time in being here for them and still doing the work. But I tell you, we should not, as parents, our children should not have to suffer for us to achieve our purpose. There should be something that we can do, some help out there that I called on the help. I called on this higher spirit, infinite intelligence, knows all and sees all. I don't understand everything that is done. We're not here to understand everything that is being worked out for our good. But no, there is an underlying good, even when we don't see it. But we have to be conscious of those moments in our lives and not be reactive. Conscious of when our children are not thriving. Conscious of using what we have to create the environment that we all need to grow and thrive. This is Tamika Chambers with Create a Generational Love Cycle. Happy Valentine's Day. Think about love. Are you sacrificing anything for love? Are you sacrificing anything for keeping your children in an environment that you know is not working for them? I didn't want my son to be a statistic. I knew that. I don't want my children to be a statistic. I don't want to be reactive. I want to be proactive. And even when I feel like I don't have what I have, I do have it. It just may not come as I think it should or as I want it should. But it came as an opportunity. We break the cycle of pain by changing the thoughts that created in the first place. And often it's thoughts of limitations. But if we see opportunities, more doors will open. We see opportunities. We can give our children the lives that they deserve. We can help and guide them and become, again, the light in the world. I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care of yourself. As always, make this lifetime great because you still can.